News of what happened at Harmony Village spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light itself. Merchant ships carried the story from one star system to another, while diplomatic channels buzzed with urgent communications between alien governments. The basic facts remained the same. No matter who told the tale, a single human had destroyed an entire Vorthan military unit after they killed his child. The first reports were dismissed as impossible exaggerations. Military analysts from a dozen different species calculated that one individual could not defeat 30 trained soldiers, no matter how skilled or motivated they might be. But as more details emerged and witness statements were verified, the truth became undeniable. Captain Yex of the merchant vessel Star Wanderer was the first to broadcast the story beyond New Terra. His ship had arrived at the colony 3 days after the massacre to deliver supplies and found a village full of humans who spoke in whispers about their neighbor who had become a one-man army. The surviving villagers told consistent stories about Kim Taeho, the quiet farmer who had revealed himself to be something far more dangerous. They described how he had systematically hunted the alien invaders through the night using skills and equipment that belonged in military arsenals, not farming communities. When Captain Yex interviewed the human survivors, he expected to find people celebrating their liberation from occupation. Instead, he found a community that was grateful, but also deeply shaken by what they had witnessed. Their rescuer had saved their lives, but he had also shown them a side of humanity they had never imagined existed. The Galactic Federation dispatched an investigation team within 48 hours of receiving the initial reports. They expected to find evidence of human military involvement or advanced weapons technology that could explain how one colonist had achieved such impossible results. What they discovered was far more disturbing. The investigators found that Kim Taeho had acted completely alone, using only standard military equipment that any retired soldier might legally possess. There was no indication of outside support or secret government backing. The man had planned and executed the entire operation using nothing but his own skills and determination. More troubling was the discovery of Tahose's true identity in the Earth military databases. Shadow 7 was not just any retired special forces operator. He was a legend among the human military elite with a service record that read like something from a science fiction novel. His achievements seemed impossible even by human standards. The Proxima War files revealed that Taeho had single-handedly infiltrated the enemy command structure and eliminated their supreme leader while surrounded by 1,000 hostile soldiers. During the Kepler Rebellion, he had destroyed 3 major weapons facilities using improvised explosives and guerrilla tactics that became required study material in military academies. When the full scope of his classified missions was revealed, alien military leaders across the galaxy began to recalculate their assessments of human capabilities. If one supposedly peaceful farmer could possess such devastating skills, then how many other retired warriors were living quietly on frontier colonies? The Vorthan Empire initially demanded justice for their dead soldiers and threatened military action against Earth unless the killer was surrendered for trial. But their attitude changed dramatically when human officials released selected portions of Shadow 7's service record. The aliens quickly withdrew their demands and offered condolences for the loss of the human child. Other alien governments that had been considering military action against human colonies suddenly found reasons to postpone their plans. The knowledge that seemingly harmless human farmers might actually be sleeping predators with advanced combat training was enough to make even the most aggressive species reconsider their intentions. Earth Command received emergency authorization to activate sleeper agents on 12 frontier worlds. Retired special forces operators who had been living as miners, farmers, and shopkeepers received coded messages informing them that their cover identities were now secondary to their primary mission of protecting human civilians. The psychological impact of the Harmony Village incident was even more significant than its immediate tactical effects. Alien military academies began teaching courses about human psychology and the dangerous bonds between human parents and their offspring. Students learned that attacking human children was not just morally wrong, but tactically suicidal. Young alien officers studied detailed analyses of how Taeho had used fear as a weapon against trained soldiers. They learned about human concepts like righteous anger and the lengths to which humans would go when seeking justice for their loved ones. The lesson was clear: humans were not the weak prey species many aliens had believed them to be. Trade relationships shifted as alien merchants became more respectful in their dealings with human colonies. Military patrols gave human. The cold metal floor felt like ice against Deho's knees. He could feel the rough surface cutting into his skin through his torn academy uniform. His hands were tied so tight behind his back that his fingers had gone numb 20 minutes ago. The 17-year-old tried to keep his breathing steady, but his heart was beating so fast it felt like it might explode next to him. Jinwoo was whispering something under his breath. Deho could not make out the words, but he knew his friend was praying. Jinwoo always prayed when he was scared. Back at the academy, he would pray before every test, before every training exercise, before every time they had to speak in front of the class. Now he was praying because he knew they were all going to. Deho sat on the other side of Jinwoo. His back was straight and his chin was up even with his hands tied. He stared right at the alien soldiers with hate in his eyes. The 16-year-old had always been the toughest one in their group. He never backed down from a fight, even when he should have. Even now, facing death, he would not let the aliens see his fear. Yang Bin was trying so hard not to cry that his whole body was shaking. The 14-year-old kept looking around the room, like he was searching for his parents or his teachers or anyone who could save them, but there was no one here except the 5 of them and the creatures who were about to kill them. His lower lip trembled, but he bit down on it hard enough to draw. Blood Tae-min was the youngest at only 13 years old. He kept turning his head to look at each of his friends like he was trying to memorize their faces. His eyes were wide with terror, but he was trying to be brave for the others. When their eyes met, he would try to smile, but the smile never lasted more than a second before the fear took over again. The room they were in was huge and cold. Everything was made of the same gray metal. The ceiling was so high that the lights hanging from it looked like tiny stars. The walls were covered with screens and strange alien writing that none of them could read. In one corner stood the broadcast equipment with its red recording light blinking. Steadily, Commander Vexstar walked slowly across the room toward them. His long, scaled tail dragged behind him, making a scraping sound on the metal floor. His yellow eyes had no pupils, just solid golden orbs that seemed to glow in the dim light. When he smiled, his mouth opened to show 3 rows of sharp teeth like a shark. He was wearing the dark blue uniform of the Velkan Empire with gold stripes on his shoulders that marked his high rank. His claws clicked against the small device in his hands as he checked the broadcast settings across the galaxy. Billions of beings were already watching, waiting to see what would happen to the 5 human boys. The Velkans had caught them 3 days ago during what was supposed to be a simple training mission. The boys were students at Earth Defense Academy learning how to pilot small scout ships. They had been practicing navigation near the asteroid belt when they accidentally flew too close to a hidden Velkan base. They saw things they were not supposed to see: ships being built in secret, weapons being tested, new technology that the Velkans did not want anyone to know about. The boys tried to run, but the alien ships were faster. Their little training craft was captured before they could send a warning back to Earth. Now the Velkans we're going to execute them on live broadcast to send a message to all of humanity. The message was simple: do not interfere with Velkan business, or this is what will happen to you. It did not matter that the boys were just students. It did not matter that they had seen the secret base by accident. The Velkans wanted to show the galaxy what happened to humans who got in their way. Vexstar stepped in front of the main camera. His scaled face filled the screen that was being watched by every human colony, every space station, every ship in the fleet on Earth. In the great cities, billions of people had stopped what they were doing to watch. Parents, teachers, government officials, all staring at their screens in horror. The boys' families were watching. Deho could picture his little sister Min Young sitting in their apartment, crying as she saw her big brother kneeling on the alien ship. Jinwoo's mother would be in the temple praying to every god. She knew Hoseok's father would be shouting at the screen, demanding that someone save his son. Youngbin's parents would be holding each other tight. Taemin's whole family would be gathered around their old television, not believing this was really happening, but it was happening, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Earth was too far away. The human fleet was too small. The Velkan Empire controlled hundreds of star systems and had ships that could destroy planets. Humanity was weak and scattered across space. They could not fight back against an empire that had been conquering worlds for thousands of years. Vexstar began to speak in his harsh alien language, but the broadcast system translated his words into every human language at the same time. His voice echoed through the room and across space, reaching every human ear in the galaxy. Citizens of the galaxy, he said with pride in his voice. Today you witness the power of the Velkan Empire. These 5 human children thought they could spy on our operations. They thought they could intrude on our territory and escape without punishment. They were wrong. The commander gestured toward the boys with one clawed hand. As he moved, Deho could see the executioner stepping forward. The alien soldier carried a plasma rifle that hummed with deadly energy. The weapon was designed to kill quickly, but the Velkans wanted this to be a show. They wanted the deaths to be visible to every camera, every eye, every heart that was watching. This is what happens to those who defy us. Vexstar continued. His golden eyes seemed to look directly through the camera at every human who was watching. When you see these bodies fall, remember that the Velkan Empire is not to be challenged. We are the masters of this galaxy, and you are nothing but insects beneath our feet. Deho closed his eyes and thought about home. He remembered running through the fields behind his house with Minyoung chasing butterflies. He remembered his mother cooking dinner and filling the whole house with the smell of her famous soup. He remembered his father teaching him to fly their old transport ship, showing him how to read the stars and navigate through space. Jinwoo was still praying, but now Deho could hear the words. He was asking for forgiveness for all his sins. He was asking for protection for his family. He was asking that somehow their deaths would mean something, that they would not die. For nothing, Hoseok had stopped staring at the aliens and was now looking at his friends. I am sorry, he whispered so quietly that only they could hear. I am sorry I could not protect you. I am sorry I could not get us out of here. Yongbin finally started crying. Silent tears ran down his cheeks, but he did not make a sound. He was thinking about his dog back home, wondering who would feed it, wondering who would take it for walks in the park. Taemin looked at each of his friends one last time, then he did something that surprised everyone. He smiled, not a fake smile, not a scared smile, but a real one full of love and friendship. Even facing death, he wanted his friends to know that he was not afraid because he was with them. The executioner raised his plasma rifle. The red targeting laser painted 5 small dots on their foreheads. The weapon charged up with a high whining sound that made the air vibrate around the galaxy. Billions of beings held their breath. 5 shots rang out like thunder in the metal room. 5 young lives ended in an instant. 5 bodies fell forward onto the cold floor. 5 families lost their children. 5 dreams died. 5 futures were erased. The BROADCAST continued for another minute, showing their still forms to make sure everyone understood what had happened. Then the signal cut to black, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. But in that silence, something began to change. Something that had been sleeping for thousands of years started to wake up. The death of 5 innocent boys had lit a fuse that would burn across the stars, and 8 minutes later, every Velkan world would begin to burn. The first Velkan patrol ship to encounter the new humanity lasted exactly 43 seconds. Sergeant Won-Sik Nam sat in what looked like a normal human fighter, but the energy readings coming from his ship were impossible. His vessel existed in multiple dimensions at once, moving through space in ways that broke every known law of physics. Won-Sik had been a cargo pilot just 2 days ago, hauling supplies between Earth colonies. Now he was something else entirely. His mind processed battle tactics at superhuman speed. His hands moved across controls that had not existed when he first entered the cockpit. His ship responded to his thoughts as much as his touch. The Velkan patrol ship tried to scan his fighter, but their sensors could not get a clear reading. One moment the human ship appeared to be a small civilian craft. The next moment it registered as something larger than a battleship. Then it seemed to vanish entirely before reappearing directly behind them. When Won-Sik fired his weapons, the Velkan ship did not just explode, it came apart at the molecular level, dissolving into component atoms that scattered across space. There was no debris, no wreckage, no evidence that a ship had ever been there except for the brief flash of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away across human space. The transformation was accelerating. Cities that had taken decades to build were being reconstructed in hours with technology that seemed to bend reality itself. Shipyards that had produced one vessel per month were now launching entire fleets every few minutes. Commander Hai-Jin Seo stood on the bridge of humanity. First true warship, watching as her crew worked with impossible efficiency. Each person moved with perfect coordination, as if they were all parts of a single mind. The ship itself seemed alive, responding to the collective will of everyone aboard her. Tactical Officer Jae-Seung-ro reported fleet status with calm precision: 700 vessels. Across 43 systems, all waiting for orders, but Hai-Jin knew this was just the beginning. Deep space sensors were detecting reinforcements approaching from the outer rim ships that had been traveling through the void for thousands of years. The vessels emerging from deep space were unlike anything in human records. They were massive beyond comprehension, built with technology that made current. Human science looked primitive, yet every human could somehow interface with them perfectly, as if they had been designed specifically for their species. What was becoming clear was that humanity had not evolved naturally on Earth. They were something far older, far more dangerous than the peaceful colonists other species had known. The gentle facade had been a kindness, allowing other races to exist without triggering humanity hunting instincts, but now those instincts were fully awake. The execution of 5 children had removed every restraint, every safeguard, every mercy that had kept humanity contained. The predators were loose, and they remembered exactly why the galaxy had once feared. The Admiral Kyung-ho-han received his first target assignment through channels that had not existed. An hour earlier, his fleet would strike the Vulcan home system, first not to capture territory or resources, but to send a message. The same message the Vulcans had tried to send by executing children. The difference was that humanity had the power to make their message heard across the entire galaxy. Admiral Kyung-ho-han materialized his strike force directly inside the Vulcan home system. Without warning, one moment the space around their capital world was empty. The next moment it was filled with ships that registered on sensors as impossibly massive, yet somehow remained invisible to the naked eye. The Vulcan home fleet was considered the most powerful military force in their sector of the galaxy. 2,000 warships armed with planet-killing weapons, protected by shields that had never been penetrated in 500 years of warfare. But as they faced the human fleet, they looked like toys floating in a bathtub. Han ship alone massed more than their entire defense grid. The energy signatures it was putting out were beyond anything their sensors could properly measure. When the Vulcans tried to scan the human vessels, their equipment simply shut down, unable to process what it was detecting. Grand Admiral Korvex tried to open communications, immediately broadcasting surrender on all frequencies. His massive flagship had been the terror of 100 worlds, but now it trembled in the presence of the human fleet like a frightened animal. "We surrender," he pleaded, his voice breaking with fear. "The execution was a mistake. We will pay reparations. We will give you anything you want. Please show mercy." Han listened to the alien pleas with the same cold expression Vexstar had worn while watching 5 children die. His response was brief and final: "You broadcast their deaths across the galaxy now. The galaxy will watch." The battle lasted exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds. But it was not really a battle. The Vulcan fleet did not get destroyed so much as it got unmade. The ships came apart at the quantum level, their atoms scattered across space until nothing remained but empty void. Their planetary shields, thought to be impenetrable, collapsed like soap bubbles. The great cities that had been built over thousands of years became brief stars before fading to nothing. The population centers, the military bases, the government buildings all vanished in flashes of light that could be seen from neighboring star systems. But Han was not content with military targets. Every Vulcan world, every station, every outpost received the same treatment. This was not conquest. This was extermination carried out with surgical precision. The humans were not angry. They showed no rage, no hatred, no emotion at all. They went about the systematic destruction of an entire species with the same casual efficiency someone might use to clear weeds from a garden. Captain Su-min Beek led the assault on Vulcan mining worlds. Her ships appeared at each location, destroyed everything that could support life. Then moved on to the next target. Major Donghayan Yun coordinated strikes against research facilities, ensuring that no Vulcan technology would survive. Colonel Zhen On personally oversaw the destruction of military academies, making certain that no future Vulcan soldiers would ever be trained. Each attack was broadcast live across the galaxy, just as the execution had been. The same networks that had carried the deaths of 5 innocent boys now showed the systematic annihilation of their killers. Every species watched in growing terror as humanity revealed what they truly were beneath their peaceful exterior. The most shocking discovery came when human archaeological teams arrived at ancient Vulcan sites buried in their oldest records. Were warnings written in languages that had been dead for millennia, warnings about the sleeping hunters who had once ruled the galaxy with absolute authority. The Vulcans' own ancestors had known what humanity was. They had spent thousands of years trying to keep the predators dormant, building careful treaties, establishing buffer zones, doing everything possible to avoid triggering the awakening by executing 5 children on live broadcast. They had undone millennia of careful concealment. The hunters were awake, and they remembered exactly why other species had learned to fear them. The last Vulcan stronghold fell on the 3rd day. Commander Sejun Park walked through the ruins of their capital city, his boots crunching on crystallized sand that had once been towering buildings. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was now just a collection of dead worlds orbiting empty stars. But humanity was not finished. The awakening had revealed memories stretching back millions of years, memories of other species who had tried to harm them, other empires that had thought humanity weak, old debts that needed to be collected with interest. The hegemony of Krell had enslaved human colonies 300 years ago, forcing them to work in mines until they died. Their descendants had forgotten about the crimes. But humanity had not. The Krell worlds began experiencing system failures that could not be explained by conventional science. Their suns started flickering, their planets began drifting out of orbit, their technology simply stopped working. The Republic of Vorth had conducted experiments on human prisoners, studying their biology like they were laboratory animals. The research had been classified secret, but the awakened humans found every file, every record, every detail of the torture that had been inflicted on their people. The Vorth discovered that their entire civilization had been built on planets that were slowly dissolving at the molecular level. The Trade Federation of Nexus had sold human children in their markets, treating them like livestock to be bought and sold. The awakened humans did not destroy their worlds. Instead, they reprogrammed reality around Nexus space. Every member of their species found themselves compelled to experience exactly what their victims had felt. Every moment of fear, every instant of pain, every second of despair multiplied across millions of alien minds. Dr. Youngsu Lim studied the readings from his monitoring station and understood what was happening. Humanity, true weapons were not ships or bombs, they were reality itself. The technology they now had access to did not just manipulate matter and energy. It rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. The aliens had thought they were fighting an advanced civilization, but they were actually facing something that existed on a completely different level of reality. To awaken humanity, the defenses of other species were less substantial than shadows. The Galactic community tried to organize a response. Ancient alliances were formed. Overnight species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly found common ground in their terror of humanity. Their combined fleets numbered in the hundreds of thousands, representing the military might of dozens of civilizations. Admiral Sung Hee Kong met their Grand Armada with exactly 7 ships. The alien fleet filled space from horizon to horizon, a wall of metal and energy that stretched across multiple star systems. But when the battle began, it lasted only 97 seconds. The Alliance fleet did not retreat or surrender. It simply ceased to exist. One moment, hundreds of thousands of ships were there. The next moment, there was only empty space and 7 human vessels moving toward the home systems of the species that had dared to threaten. The few survivors who escaped brought back the same terrifying report. Humans were not using advanced technology. They were somehow rewriting the laws of existence itself. Ships would vanish from reality, planets would phase out of normal space, star systems would go dark as if someone had simply turned off a switch. But What frightened the survivors most was how calm the humans remained throughout it all. They showed no anger, no rage, no emotion. They simply went about their work with quiet efficiency, like gardeners tending to an overgrown field. The galaxy was learning what 5 dead children had died to reveal. Humanity was not just another species competing for resources, they were something far beyond what anyone had ever imagined. The apex predators of the universe finally awake after ages of merciful sleep. 6 months after the broadcast, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once hundreds of species had competed for territory and resources, now there was mostly silence, broken only by the occasional human patrol. The great empires were gone, the ancient trade routes were empty, the bustling space stations drifted abandoned through the void. President Junho Shin addressed the surviving species from Earth Capitol building. Behind him, the night sky showed a galaxy that had been fundamentally altered. Where enemy worlds had once burned bright, there were now only empty spaces between the stars. "We gave you a chance," he said quietly to the handful of alien ambassadors who remained. These representatives came from less than a dozen worlds now, the only civilization smart enough to have never threatened humanity in any way. "For thousands of years, we pretended to be weak so you could feel strong. We let you build your empires, fight your wars, explore your dreams of conquest. All we asked in return was to be left in peace." The surviving ambassadors listened in terrified silence. They had seen what happened to species that had harmed humans. Even those who had committed crimes centuries ago had been held accountable. The awakened humans remembered everything and forgave nothing. "You chose to execute 5 children for the entertainment of your populations." Shin continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You chose to broadcast their deaths as a warning to others. What you actually did was wake something that had been sleeping for your protection." Dr. Mi Young-song had finished her analysis of the galactic restructuring. Entire star systems had been moved, rearranged into patterns that served humanity purposes. Hyperspace lanes had been redirected. The very fabric of space-time had been altered to ensure human dominance would never again be challenged. "The old galaxy is gone," she reported to the human leadership. "What remains is more stable, more orderly, more peaceful. The species we have allowed to survive have been adjusted to ensure they will never again threaten innocent lives." The surviving races had indeed been changed at the genetic level. Their capacity for large-scale violence had been removed. Their aggressive instincts had been dampened. They could still defend themselves against natural threats, but the idea of harming other sentient beings had become literally unthinkable to them. Captain Jun Seok-cha patrolled the new borders of human space in his reality-bending ship. The galaxy was quiet now, peaceful in a way it had never been before. Children on 1,000 worlds played safely, never knowing that their security came from the complete elimination of every threat to innocence. The memorial to Daeho Jinwoo Hoseok, Young Bin and Taemin stood in the center of Seoul, 5 simple black stones, surrounded by gardens where children came to play. Visitors from across human space made pilgrimages to pay their respects to the boys whose deaths had revealed humanity true purpose. They had not just been random victims. They had been the catalyst that reminded humanity why they had been hidden away in the first place, not because they were weak, but because they were too powerful, too dangerous to be allowed to roam free among lesser species. The peaceful farmers and merchants that other races had known were gone forever, replaced by the true humanity, the apex predators, who had once ruled the galaxy with absolute authority. Now they had reclaimed their birthright, and this time they would make sure no child would ever again die for the entertainment of those who mistook mercy for weakness. The galaxy belonged to humanity again, as it always had, as it always would, and in the quiet spaces between the stars 5 young voices whispered that their deaths had not been in vain.